In this episode of The Christian Philosopher, we'll talk about why near-death experiences are the seventh reason to think that Christianity is true. Welcome back, everyone. Scott Sullivan here from the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. This is the seventh video in a series of videos I am making called 10 Reasons to Think Christianity is True. This is the seventh reason, the seventh video in that series. So far in prior videos, we have seen that not only did Jesus claim to be God, and if he wasn't right about that, then he was either lying or crazy. Not only did he back up that claim by fulfilling prophecy, not only did he back up that claim by rising from the dead, not only did he back up that claim by making a prediction that was fulfilled, that his religion would spread all over the world. This is a very improbable thing, as I've argued. And nowadays, Christianity is the most popular religion in the world. Not only did he back up that claim by leaving what seems to be a miraculous picture of himself in the Shroud of Turin, not only did he back up that claim by still doing scientifically validated miracles today, but also we can talk about this idea of near-death experiences. Now, I want to emphasize here from the start, what I mean here when I'm talking about near-death experiences, I'm not just talking about that stuff you read about in the weird New Age section of the bookstore. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about scientific research now into NDEs or near-death experiences. With modern technology, we can kind of keep people alive better and do more things for them at that point of death, and we can measure things that wasn't possible in ages past. And this has given birth to a whole field of research into near-death experiences. And this is not just the New Agey stuff, okay? I'm talking about peer-reviewed articles in scientific academic journals. So we're nowhere near this New Age nonsense. So I'm talking about the science of near-death experiences and what that has told us. And what we found now is that millions of people, and that is no exaggeration, millions of people in the West have experienced this thing that after death, once they have been declared clinically dead, say from a heart attack or something, clinically dead, that is to say, no measurable brain activity, nothing on the EEG, no gag reflex. You stick something, the brainstem is not even working. There's no gag, there's no blink reflex, nothing. The brain is seemingly completely shut down. So therefore, these people are declared clinically dead. These are people who shouldn't be experiencing anything at all, okay? They do, at this point, see these millions of people have a series of life-changing experiences. Now, this, of course, has, I think, enormous implications for the philosophy of mind. What is the mind? Is the mind just the brain? Because if the mind is just the brain, and the brain is not having any activity at all, then there shouldn't be any conscious experience at all either. But there is in these cases. So I think the near-death experience has a lot to say on this topic of what is the mind. But also it has a lot to say when it comes to questions of the existence of God and even the truth of Christianity. So in order to show this, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk about why these near-death experiences need to be taken seriously, and then secondly, why they support the truth of Christianity. All right, so let's first talk about why these near-death experiences need to be taken seriously. As I've mentioned, there are many scientific studies on this topic. If you're interested in some of these, I like the work of Dr. Bruce Grayson or Dr. Pin von Lommel. They have, I think, good work. They've done good work in this area. And what these studies have shown is, like I said, millions of people have had these near-death experiences. Now, I want to say that everybody's near-death experiences is a little bit different. So we're not saying that everyone's is exactly the same. However, when you look at all the different near-death experiences, you do see a common core. There's a common pattern that seems to be recurring time and time again across the board. So while there are some details in everybody's individual near-death experience that differs from everybody else, still there is a common pattern or common core experience that everybody seems to be undergoing. This consists of several elements. Number one, an out-of-body experience. When a person dies, they feel themselves rise up and kind of float above their body. They're able to see their body and kind of look around. They describe this visual experience as very unique. It's more clear, they say. They can see much more clearly than they could in their body. So there's this out-of-body experience. There's accurate visual perception when out of the body. They are seeing things that are really going on. We'll talk about that in a minute. There is also accurate auditory perception when out of the body. They say they can hear better when they're dead and out of their body than they could when in the body. And what they're hearing can be verified as accurate. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then they say they have this what is known as a tunnel experience. Their soul, if you will, is just whooshing down. They describe it as a whoosh. It's just whooshing down this tunnel. They see a being of light, of indescribable beauty and joy. Many of them describe it, of course, as God. They have overwhelming feelings of peace and calm. Many of them experience what is known as a life review. They see their whole life before them like in a movie, and they experience all the effects of their actions on others, good or bad. They have this awareness of being in a different world, and then some of them say they encounter relatives and friends who have passed away. Now, of course, skeptics aren't going to buy this. Skeptics are going to say that these people really aren't experiencing anything. Rather, it must be something else. Maybe it's the brain, right? At the point of death, maybe the brain is kind of doing something because of the lack of oxygen. Maybe it's because of the drugs that are given to these people. It must be something else like that, according to these skeptics. Now, I don't think this skeptical response works, and for a number of reasons. The first reason why I don't think this works is because of veridically reported data. What I mean here is this occurs when a person having the near-death experience reports data back that can be later verified by people who were really there. So in this case, the person says that, hey, I was floating above my body and the doctor did this, or down the hall, this and this happened. They give data that can be checked and corroborated, and it has been done so. And every study has this. So this can't be just the brain's lack of oxygen. We're talking about someone who's lying on a table. Usually their eyes are taped shut. Maybe they're under general anesthesia. That happens sometimes. And they're able to see, even better than normal, what's going on and hear what's going on in the room, down the hall, whatever, and they report that information back when they come back into their body, and they're right. The data they are reporting is veridical. It's true. So in this sense, when this happens, their experience can be cross-checked. So it's pretty remarkable that a person there with their eyes closed, maybe eyes taped shut, under general anesthesia, having suffered a heart attack, let's say, with no gag reflex, right? No brainstem activity, no brain activity. They're able to see and hear stuff and report that back to the people who were there and have them corroborate it and verify it. Fascinating. This can't be a matter of mere just drugs or hallucination or lack of oxygen in the brain. The second reason is visual perception of the blind. So there have been numerous studies on people who were born blind, who have never been able to see before in their life until they are quote-unquote dead, at least clinically dead, and they are able to see for the first time and report back what they have seen. A third reason to reject this skeptical idea that near-death experiences are just the brain doing something weird is that some people who've had a near-death experience are able to report back information about deceased individuals, deceased relatives. They say they see deceased people, friends, relatives, or whoever, and they have information that they could not have known otherwise. There are numerous examples of this, and I suggest if you're interested in that you should check out some of the literature. But in any case, these reasons tell us that these out-of-body perceptions are veridical. They're true. They seem to be legit. There is no reason for them to honestly be having any kind of conscious experience at all when their brain is in such a state, but they are, and In these cases, at least, we're able to cross-check what they see. It's blind people who are able to see things for the first time, and they report back sometimes information about deceased individuals that they could not have known otherwise. So, as one researcher has put it, since the publication of several prospective studies on near-death experiences in survivors of cardiac arrest with strikingly similar results and conclusions, the phenomenon of the near-death experience can no longer be scientifically ignored. The near-death experience is an authentic experience which cannot be simply reduced to imagination, fear of death, hallucination, psychosis, the use of drugs, or oxygen deficiency. All right, so that's why these near-death experiences need to be taken seriously. Let's move on and talk about how they might support the truth of Christianity. The reason why here is, of course, Jesus talked a lot about the nature of the afterlife. He had a lot of things, obviously, to say about it. So if Christianity is true, right, when we die, we would expect to see certain things, right? If Christianity is true, then what we talk about in theology, the four last things of death, judgment, heaven, and hell, we would expect to see some of that stuff, experience it, if Christianity were true. And what we're seeing now with these near-death experiences is that there is a significant amount of correlation between what these people having a near-death experience are experiencing and what Christian theology, what Jesus Christ himself taught about the nature of the afterlife. So, in other words, when you read the literature, it seems to me that the near-death experience itself is pretty rich in Christian theological elements. Let's look at some of these. I think there are at least 5 common elements between Christian teaching about the nature of the afterlife, what Jesus said it's going to be like after we die, okay, and then what the near-death experience people are in fact experiencing. There's at least 5 elements, I think, of significant correlation. And of course, like I said, there are, with every near-death experience, it's kind of unique in a sense. Everybody has a different sort of experience when it comes down to some of the details. But like I said, there's a common core experience here that seems to remain the same across individuals and even across cultures. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's look at these 5 common correlating elements between the near-death experience and Christian theology. Number 1, of course, is the continued existence of the soul, that there even is an afterlife, right? Jesus taught that our souls continue to exist after the death of our body, and that we're going to have some kind of conscious experience after death. Near-death experiences confirm this, right? This teaching of Jesus. They say that our consciousness does not die when our body dies, but they have this experience of like a soul. They float above their body, and they say they can move location just with a thought and even go through walls. So they have this conscious, soul-like experience after the death of the body, just like Jesus taught. The second common element is the existence and nature of God. Contrary to a lot of pagan religions who said there are many gods and they have all these personality problems, Jesus taught that there was one God, monotheism. Jesus said there is one God who is the God of love and the God of light. It's very interesting. Jesus taught one God who is a God of love and a God of light. That's pretty unique, I think, to Christianity. And near-death experiences confirm this teaching of Jesus. People who have this near-death experience almost universally, describe a God, one God, not many, one God of indescribable beauty, love, and peace. They describe this God as a God of light all the time in these near-death experiences, and they say it is a God of love. And they say that being in the presence of this God just brings such an incredible, immense feeling of joy and peace. It's so intense, they say it can't be described. So, again, just like Jesus taught about the existence of God and his nature, we see that confirmed in the near-death experience. The third element is love. Love as the primary purpose in life. In contrast to many religions, the purpose of life, is not like the Vikings said to die on the battlefield and go and drink beer in Valhalla. No, the purpose of life is love. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. So the teaching of Jesus Christ on the purpose of life is love. Pretty unique, I think, to Christianity. And again, we see this confirmed in people who have had a near-death experience. They say that the overwhelming purpose of life is to love. That's pretty much it, and that's pretty incredible. That what Jesus said about the purpose of life is exactly what these people who die and experiencing this God of light say as well. All right. The fourth element is the existence of divine judgment. The existence of divine judgment. Everybody knows that Jesus taught this, right? Jesus taught that we will all be judged at the end of our lives for the deeds we have done while in the body. This, too, has been confirmed by those who have had a near-death experience. They say that they experience what they call a life review. They can see everything they did throughout their whole lives, and they experience the effects of their actions, good or bad. So when you mistreat someone, you're going to feel like that person felt. When you treat someone well, you're going to feel like that person felt too. Kind of scary in a way, for me at least. But anyway, it is a sort of, here's what your life is. You know what I mean? And they experience this as sort of a judgment on themselves, and they say it can't even be ignored. It's plainly evident. So again, we see a teaching of Jesus being confirmed in the near-death experience. And finally, number 5, the existence of heaven and hell. Everybody knows that Jesus taught this, that our eternal destiny, that's the last 2 of the 4 last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. That all of us are going to end up in one of those 2 places. And so people who have had a near-death experience seem to confirm this. Many who have had a near-death experience say there's a certain point of no return. They say that they're traveling down this tunnel and they see God, and they realize that there's a certain point in which they can't come back. That once you cross over that line, it's it. You're not coming back to the body, so to speak. And many of them describe heaven. It's just a beautiful place, indescribable joy and peace. And this has been underplayed in some of the literature. Other people have what is known as a hellish near-death experience. I think it's about 18%, according to the literature, experience hell, horrible place with pain and suffering and demons. So this teaching of Jesus of heaven and hell and its existence also seems to be confirmed by the near-death experience. All right, so the point here, of course, is that if Christianity is true, then after we die, we would expect to see Christian things. We would expect our after-death experience to be rich in Christian theological themes. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're seeing here. And also, you should know this. I've said that these core elements are common. What I mean here is that they are cross-cultural. So people all over the world have had these experiences. People from different religions, people from different cultures. So if you wanted to say that these near-death experiences, they're heavily influenced by what we would expect. We would expect you were trained, with your Christian upbringing to see Christian things after you die. No, because these core elements that I'm talking about are experienced by people all over the world. And if it were just what we would expect by our upbringing, we would expect to see different sorts of content in the near-death experience. But the opposite is true. So these similarities across different cultures and religions, these are quite impressive. So anyway, according to current scientific research on near-death experiences, we continue to exist after we die, and that afterlife is very much like Jesus said it would be. So let's summarize our argument this way. If we have good reasons to think that the human afterlife experience is what Jesus said it would be, then we have good reasons to think Christianity is true. We do have good reasons to think that the human afterlife experience is what Jesus said it would be. Therefore, we have good reason to think that Christianity is true. This argument is valid. If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. I think the premise, of course, is self-evident, as any could be. And the second premise, of course, is verified by the core near-death experience that has happened to thousands, if not millions of people. So for this reason, the near-death experience gives us yet another reason to think that Christianity is true.